Hi, my name's Andrew Prendergast. I'm senior partner over here at White Dalton Motorcycle Solicitors. And what we're doing in today's episode is talking about the truth about collision investigation. So to help me with that, I've got Chris Taylor here with me, who's been a collision investigator, and he's going to help us talk through some of the cases and what people do with regards to investigating collisions and evidence gathering and the like. If you get called into a road traffic accident and you turn up at the scene as a police investigator, what are you looking to do when you get there?
Right. First thing to do when we get there, we're always hoping to get there when everything is still in situ. An early visit to the scene is best.
I've heard people where the police have turned up, and you might have said this to me in the past, someone's been helpful, swept things up.
Yeah, or everything's been hosed down. So,
right, so you're hoping not to have that?
As we would like to get there as it happened.
Yeah.
And we will look at the scene to record any physical evidence.
Yeah.
Either by notes, photography, surveying of the scene.
Yeah. So I think in the olden days, I'll call them the olden days. Apologies. Both got grey in our beard. But in the olden days, you'd literally sit there and draw a map out, a scale map.
Yeah.
And in the modern era, you've got a 3D scanner you can put out that will, if they mark out the various points on there, it will basically scan the scene and produce a plan. Have I got the right handle on that?
That's the right generally. I mean,
yeah.
When I joined, we were doing plans by hand.
Yeah.
And to get all the measurements and draw a scale plan would take about a week. So you'd look for your physical evidence, skid marks, scuff marks, gouges, evidence on the road surface, evidence on roadside furniture.
Yeah.
You would have a look at the vehicles before they were moved and before they were messed with, checking things like tyre pressures, where the controls are, what gear it's in, radio on or off, central,
So really down to the little nitty-gritty details.
Every little bit. You're trying to examine the vehicle quickly, but before it's recovered.
Right, okay.
So we know we know where the controls were.
And we once had a case a few years ago where you were our defence expert, if you'll recall. I won't say too much about the case, but basically the police had recovered the car, had reinflated all the tyres to move it, if you recall.
I deliberately didn't put that down as one of these.
But you remember that case?
I do remember it.
Yeah, so we're trying not to do that. You're trying to get it fresh before anyone's mucked around with it.
Yeah.
That'd be fair to
say. So everything should be collected as much as you can at the time.
Okay.
And then when you get back to the station, your photographs are developed.
Yeah.
Your survey is developed on screen and then eventually printed out. And it can take anything from a few days to a few weeks to consider all the evidence, put your conclusions together. And it was our practice in our office. You do your report before you looked at any witness evidence.
Okay, so you weren't influenced by anything?
We would not be influenced by witnesses.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
Some forces, you get the bundle straight away.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would drop the statements with us, but we wouldn't look at them until we'd finished. So once you'd finished, you could then look and say, right, does the witness evidence match up to what my conclusions are?
Right.
Is it going to ring any alarm bells there? And on the flip side, are the witnesses saying what really happened?
Yeah.
Or are they putting together a full story off a few snippets that they've seen or heard?
So when you go to the scene, there might be things like tyre skid marks, scuff marks, gouges on the road, and you're trying to gather all that stuff to sometimes gather evidence to work out what's happened, but also eliminate things that aren't
part of the crash,
to try and then work out what's happened.
By using things like gouges, skid marks, having examined the vehicles, we can work out directions of travel, we can work out whether they were braking beforehand, aggressive steering, aggressive acceleration, point of impact, who was on the right side, who was on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
Which all builds up the picture for you to start your conclusions.
Yeah.
And of course, from the physical evidence gathered, you can then start looking at the physical evidence to work out speeds.
Well, that sort of takes me neatly on, because I was going to say let's consider like the classic motorbike collision that we deal with, and you've helped me with in the past. So if we have a bike's on the main road and a car's pulling out of it, what can we do to sort of look at calculating speed in those kind of... Because it always goes, how many times have we had it, He was flying, he came from nowhere, he must have been speeding. I mean, this is the stuff...
And then when we've looked at it...
And then we've looked at it and gone, well, hang on, that's not right. So what can you do to try and... If that allegation is made to one of my clients, is like, yeah, he was speeding, what can you do as an expert, or should be doing as an expert, either for the police or for a civil case, to try and assess those things?
Well, there's two different things you can do there. One, you can try and assess the speed of the motorcycle. You've got a point of impact.
Yep.
You can look at the post-position, collision position of the rider.
So if he's been thrown off,
thrown off and over.
Yep.
And or the motorcycle if it slid down the road.
Yep.
The rider's position will be marked usually by bandages and, he was there.
Yep.
The motorcycle sliding along the road, you're going to get scratches and gouges until it reaches its post-collision position.
So sometimes if you've got the bike and they hit the car, you're saying the rider will be thrown off and you can then work out, depending on their weight and how far they've gone and all the rest of it, sometimes you can work out what speed the impact was.
We can work out the approximate speed of the motorcycle as the rider went off.
Yeah.
There's two calculations that we can do.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a belt and braces. One does a range and one suggests a full speed.
Got you.
By having considered the post-collision speed of the rider, so you've gone back from zero where the rider has come to rest.
Got you.
Back to the car where they're full contact, an approximate speed at impact.
Yeah.
You can then look at the motorcycle and any pre-collision marks to work out a speed that he either started braking or a speed loss for the motorcycle at impact.
Are you talking about skid marks?
Skid marks, gouges, scratches. A lot of bikers will say, I saw it was happening, so I laid it down on its side. To be honest, I've not seen many motorcyclists who've got the reactions to do that. They may have laid it on its side by applying the brakes.
I think sometimes we've heard that where, and this is not a criticism of anyone, but afterwards we all sit there after an event's happened and we'll start trying to work through and work out our internal soundtrack as to what's happened. And I've fallen off my bike. I've never laid mine down personally.
No.
I've just fallen off and wish I hadn't.
A few
times over the years in different scenarios. So we're looking at throw, we're looking at possible tyre marks. Is there anything about the bike, so like where the front wheels hit or anything, or the forks or that kind of stuff?
Well, as you've seen probably with several of my reports for you, you can look at the damage to the motorcycle.
Yeah.
For instance, you can look at how far back the forks and wheel have bent. There are continual scientific studies on crash damage to motorcycles and cars. And by looking at the distance that the front wheel forks have been displaced, you can come up with an approximate speed. It gives you a range of speed lost.
So would it be fair to say this isn't, when we watch TV programs, it's almost like the science is definitive, and you watch these TV programs as like, and we can conclude this. But would it be fair to say what you're saying is it's like you got to look at everything in the round holistically, and then you can go, right, there's going to be a range. So I've looked at the forks, let's say they were only slightly bent. I've looked at the crash damage to the car, it's got crumple zones and a short skid mark, so I can say this biker wasn't travelling at 100 miles an hour, he was travelling at 30 miles an hour. Is it that kind of flavour?
I mean, if you cannot come up with a speed, you can say that, like you said, he wasn't going fast.
Yeah.
And then somebody will say, well, how fast is not going fast?
Yeah.
But if the front wheel has been crushed back to the frame and the wheels deformed or shattered, you're probably looking at an impact speed of 30 or over.
Okay.
If the wheel hasn't been pushed back that far, it's less than 30.
And that's come from obviously scientific testing, but also your experience of attending scenes and
it's doing tests on the vehicles ourselves.
Okay.
So you can look at that part of it. I mean, there's a scientific procedure where you can look at the speedometer.
Yeah.
If it's an analog speedometer.
Yeah. So an old-fashioned rather than a digital
old-fashioned with
one.
a needle rather than the readout.
Yeah.
And in some circumstances, in scientific lab conditions, you can examine the face of the speedometer to see if it has got what they call needle slap.
So is this a lot on say more of an analog speedo? The needle's going like that, and you're saying if it's hit, it's like basically left a little mark on the glass.
It could leave it. It could just tap either the glass on a rebound, or the face of the speedometer.
Got you.
So you need photographic equipment. You need various different
technical stuff.
Technical, you couldn't do it in the office at work.
Right, fair enough. So as well as all that, and just sort of coming on to technology, obviously got video as well nowadays, which probably wasn't such a thing when you started, but was certainly a thing by the time you'd finished.
Yeah.
So what sort of things are you trying to seize videos from? Say, I don't know, doorbells or petrol stations, and then what are you doing with those videos to try and work stuff out?
As the years have progressed, videos have got more and more numerous.
Yeah.
And I should imagine nearly half the cars out there now are using a dash cam.
Probably true, follow that.
We can examine recorded evidence on the dash cam,
Yeah.
compared it to the physical evidence again, you'd have to make sure that the dash cam was working correctly.
Yeah.
A lot of dash cams, when you look at the screen, it'll tell you how fast you're going.
Yeah.
Well, you want to know,
Is that right?
is it correct?
Yeah.
So you do tests on that. A lot of roadside furniture now has video cameras.
Yeah.
Shops, garage forecourts.
So again, you got to be looking as a policeman turning up now compared to when you
You've got
started.
to be looking everywhere.
Looking up everywhere to see what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, got you.
It becomes second nature in the end, because once you've done it once or twice, it does help.
So if you seize a video from somewhere as a policeman, or you get it as a motorbike solicitor, and we pass it to you as a civil expert in the collision investigation business, are you then looking at sort of how fast the video is recording at? Are you then trying to work out distances between lampposts to work out vehicle speeds? How do you use the videos, or how do you use it to try and help you work out a speed, at least an approximation?
Well, I mean, for instance, if you've got a speedometer on a video on a garage forecourt,
Yeah.
the lens will give a spread of view to left and right.
Got
So
you.
you can use that to work out a distance that,
So between-
that can be seen by the camera.
Yeah.
And then you can play the video, work out when say for instance, a passing motorcycle starts to come into view to when it passes and out of view.
Yeah.
So you've then got a distance and you've got a time.
Got you.
And for a rough equation, you can use time and distance and come up with an average or constant speed for that. I mean, for instance, one for your office, but not for you.
Yeah.
I went down to a seaside town with Mr. Dalton.
Did it involve a cup of tea and a sticky bum before you started?
I might have done for Andrew. No, but there were some roadworks and a motorcycle had gone through when the lights had gone on green. He'd passed a camera on a garage forecourt,
Yeah.
gone down the road. A security van had pulled out in front of him and he'd struck the van, quite seriously injured. Before Mr. Dalton got hold of the file, it was all sent to another solicitor's office and another expert.
Yeah.
And the expert worked out that the motorcycle, as it passed the camera, some 40 yards from the roadworks, was doing 120 mile an hour.
I'd be fairly
I
likely.
would love a motorbike like that, honestly.
So it would have been going pretty quick, to
He'd
be
have
fair.
been, he'd been thrashing it on a bit.
Yeah.
And therefore, this expert decided that the motorcyclist must have been at fault. And looking at his speed, he probably must have come through the traffic lights on red to get up to that speed.
So what we're saying is if that expert had been relied on, our client's case would be dead in the water because this boy basically was doing 120 miles an hour in a
That's
normal
right, yeah.
area. So that's pretty big statement,
Yeah.
quite damning statement against us.
So Andrew and myself had an early morning start down there,
Yeah.
examined the scene, popped into the garage, had a look at the video equipment. And we'd got it on one of the computers and we played it through a few times. And I said to Andrew, these pedestrians are walking awfully fast. Because they were pedestrians. It was something like out of a 1920s black and white movie, yeah.
Yeah.
So went into the scientific part of it. And the video was recording at twice the speed it should have been,
Right, okay.
which dropped the client's speed down from 120 mile to about 58,
Right.
59.
So where he should have been.
It was a 50 limit or a 40 limit. He was still riding with enthusiasm. But
Spirited.
yeah,
But
not-
it wasn't 120
but not
miles
so
an
bad.
hour.
But like you say, if we'd have accepted the 120 mile an hour, on a civil side, his compensation would have dwindled to next to nothing. But he could have ended up in court,
Yeah, yeah.
magistrate or Crown,
Yeah.
with a dangerous driving or
Yeah.
the like.
So it's important to look at these things properly.
And if you recall the case, the guy was almost quadriplegic anyway as a result of the collision. And the compensation that he was going to get or did get certainly went towards making his life better.
Yeah,
Which he would have got none of if it had been proved he was doing 120 miles an hour.
Good job swap to you then.
I wouldn't say it's a good job he spoke to me, because any interested accident investigator would have looked at it and said, we've got to prove the speed of the
Yeah.
video. Instead of the guy had said, 120, speed, time, distance, quick calculation, yeah.
Job.
So I visit down to Dover to look at the crash scene and to check everything out. and to look at the scene and compare it with the video paid off.
So then, Chris, we've been talking a lot about what you were doing whilst you were with the police, but obviously life moved on after you left the police.
Yeah.
So just explain what you did when you were a civil collision investigator.
Yeah. Right, 2007, I retired from the police for my own company, CJT Associates, which was basically a solo operator. Having left the police, you then depend on work coming in from insurance companies, solicitors' offices, individuals, and the criminal evidence part doesn't change a lot. But when you start moving into the civil claims part, there's a completely different procedure.
So just for the
notations.
Viewers, so for the viewers at home, you'll be maybe brought in by a private individual or a solicitor's firm to either help with defending a criminal allegation someone's made against someone, or you might be brought in by a law firm to try and prove that someone has been hurt because of someone's negligence in the civil court. So there are two roles, but the same set of skills.
Same skill set, but slightly different versions of how you.
Because you're aiming for different things. So in the criminal courts, obviously, if the CPS are prosecuting a biker, they're trying to prove beyond a reasonable doubt they've committed a crime. And in the civil courts, the test is different. You, as the injured biker, need to prove on the balance of probabilities that someone's done something wrong and hurt you. And that's how you would. Same skills, but you're aiming for different types of reports.
Well, like you say, in a criminal case, got to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. So if there is any margin of doubt or degree of doubt that you find as a collision investigator, you've got to put that forward and say, well, that's not the full story.
Okay.
So the police evidence might be spot on or just miss something slightly or a different emphasis put on something. And as a defence expert, and I use the word defence expert, but you are still an independent expert.
So even if I'm paying you to help me...
I'm still independent and impartial.
And your duty is to the court.
Yeah. Although we have had to point this out a couple of times to different barristers that I'm not a hired gun.
You won't just say what someone wants you to say because you're being paid.
I had one barrister at a county court in Bristol who wanted me to do a particular calculation. And I said, I've done that once. And the speed is this. He said, I want you to run it through again and do the same calculation again using these figures. And no, I can't accept those figures. And we had a big argument outside the court, and his passing words were, I'll make sure you never work again.
Wow.
Well, that was 12 years ago. and I didn't notice any decrease in work.
No, but your experience, your reputation is everything.
That's all I've got, is my experience and my honesty. I've had to say to several lots of potential solicitors, barristers, and individuals, you are buying my services, you are not buying me.
Yeah.
I will give an independent report on the collision, and I don't change that. And that's one of the reasons I always enjoyed working with White Dalton.
Yeah.
You knew that if I gave you the report, it was black and white.
Straight down the line.
I'd got nothing missed out, and I wasn't trying to infer, suggest, or lose anything.
Well, you always told me as well, if you had a report and you based it on a presumption, as soon as you've got more than one presumption, then it's all going to fall to bits.
One presumption, you've got to give a range.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, you've calculated a speed. If you've assumed the coefficient of friction of the road surface, or how sticky it is, or you've assumed various other factors, you've got to give a spread of speed. If you then move on to do another calculation using your speed you've already calculated and make other assumptions, the margin of error becomes wider and wider and wider.
Pointless.
And then it becomes pointless in the end.
So then, Chris, we've discussed in part one your background, what your role was in the police, and some of the things you need to be looking at when you're a collision investigator. So we're going to finish this part of the series in part one. And then in part two, we're going to come back and look at some of the cases you've been involved in, and you can talk us through the evidence and what you've gathered from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for watching this. Please like and subscribe our channel. If you've got any questions or any comments, please feel free to put them below. We do read everything, and then where we can, we'll come back and answer any questions in later videos. Thank you very much, and see you in part two.